I am so excited to kick off the poetry of ORSC, something that's brand new in our system, with the wonderful Frank Bolaji Irawo. Did I say it right?
Oh, yes. You landed that one.
I landed that one. Frank, it's been a pleasure meeting you through ORSC Fundamentals. And all of a sudden, you sent me this email with the most beautiful poetry. I think the poetry really hit me in the heart, and I wanted to have this conversation with you. Maybe introduce you. Well, I'd like to introduce you to the ORSC community, and would love to know a little bit about you, who you are, how you ended up in ORSC, however you want to say it. Maybe we'll just have a conversation around poetry. It's something we're all, maybe potentially here a bit scared of doing, because poetry feels hard. Anyway, I'd like to hear it, and maybe we could read some of the poetry that you've shared with me, because I've loved all of them.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this podcast with you. Eh, My name is Frank Bolaji Irawo, like you said. I'm a father of two to my wonderful wife, Yvonne. I'm a coach, I'm a poet, published author, speaker, all sorts of things. But I think predominantly what I've found and how I ended up kind of with ORSC really was that I actually spent about 30 years in IT, believe it or not, doing anything from engineering to project management. But that paid the bill. But my real passion was working with people, which I did a lot of in spiritual communities, mostly churches, where, I was the person giving advice, if you like. I was the person people come to for wisdom. However, in my work setting, we were changing project frameworks from waterfall to agile. And we came across some agile coaches, and I was frustrated initially because they kept trying to coach us into it. And I was expecting them just to show up and say, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, and we go and do it. But they wouldn't do that. But in the end, I saw the wisdom of their approach, because by them coaching us through how we could make agile work for us, we had ownership, agency,
Yeah.
and then we were also empowered to keep modifying it in a way that worked for us. And that opened my eyes to the power of coaching. I thought to myself, okay, rather than me giving all these people advice, I might do them better service if I coached them so that they could work out ways of approaching their own situations in the future and not keep coming back to me. So I then went on a trajectory of transforming and transitioning from IT project management into coaching. In all of that, I also had a kind of evolution in my spirituality. And I went from being a Christian fundamentalist to a more grace-filled, love-inclusive kind of Christian. And I met someone who then said to me, you've got a gift for writing, share what you're learning. And that's where the poetry started. And what I found was poetry was very nice way of summarizing something I'd just covered in maybe a blog or something like that. And then that went dormant for a while until I did my coaching training, and then that was reactivated. And what I found is when I started finding themes in what my clients were experiencing, and I began to think through it, poetry was a good way for me to consolidate that and also offer it to other clients who are experiencing similar things as a way of them to say, okay, here's a piece here that you could reflect on and tell me what comes up for you, whether it's resistance or resonance, doesn't really matter. And that often opens up new ways of thinking. It opens up hidden resistances or hidden wisdom. And so I don't use Project so much in the coaching session itself, but I found it invaluable for post reflection because I found out that a lot of the shift for clients happen between sessions. And by using those carefully placed ones based on themes that have already come up, I found out that's really been very helpful for my clients. So I hope that helps kind of explain poetry, myself, coaching, and how we got here. We haven't touched the ORSC yet, but we can do that next. I just want to give you an opportunity to come in.
Wonderful. Thank you. Even just when you said the shift from fundamental Christianity into a loving, more spiritual, inclusive Christianity, I felt the love It is radical thinking, isn't it, to bring in this concept of spirituality into our coaching and poetry. Again, I think we are very good as coaches to read poetry that touches us. But what you're bringing to is being inspired and even allowing the poetry to come through the coaching in your relationship with your client, and to create something, words that resonate or not with your client, but something to give them to ponder, or maybe at the beginning of the next session. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good segue actually into ORSC and how we ended up with me sending you those poems, because and if we get the opportunity to read something, then those links can become a bit clearer. But what I actually discovered was that when I made my switch spiritually and began to look at things, actually when I came into coaching, I began to recognize that there were ways in which, because I have a personal story where I tried to be a coach before and I had a problem achieving that. And one of the problems was that I was trying to earn income that would mean I didn't have to work so I could full-time coach. But what I ended up finding out was I ended up making decisions that didn't support me. And that caused me to reflect on why I was making those decisions. Then I realized that there was a misalignment internally. And then I recognized that I was trying to achieve an outward identity in order to make myself feel like I was enough. Then I began to think, well, what if I reverse that? What if it's an inside out thing? Therefore, if I felt I was enough, what could I create from a place of being enough? So that kind of was where I was coming from. And I recognized that the system I was operating with was a cultural one, where the emphasis was, because I come from a Nigerian background, sometimes there can be an overemphasis in that environment on what you appear to be than what you actually are. So then I didn't recognize that influence on me when I was going there. So that reflecting back on that made me recognize, okay, that is it. And as part of the coaching partnership and association with, when they introduced the idea of joining ORSC and doing that course, I thought, oh, this would be interesting. This will open the door to group coaching, because you're now dealing with the system. You're not dealing just with the individual, because you can fix an individual, put them back in the system, and all of a sudden, everything gets undone, or it just takes a different direction, or doesn't have the sustainable kind of outcome you might look for. So I was intrigued by that aspect of systems coaching. And then I began to think, wait a minute, there is a metaphysical element to the ideas being purported here. And I'm sure I've got pieces somewhere that relate to, and that's when I sent you the email. And probably might be a good opportunity for you to share how that landed when you saw those and how you felt they related.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because people do come, a lot of our participants come to ORSC, as you said, as an external identity. I am now becoming a team coach, and here are all the tools and the skills. What is another thing that we provide in the training is this inward looking of who am I as a system? How are the systems around me operating to impact how I'm showing up? Because Faith Fuller, who's the co-author of the Organizational Relationship Systems Coaching Program, said something to me last week, which really stuck by me. She said that we are, from the divinity of the universe, we hold all the parts of it, and all that is required is for us to bring our parts together. So this is what systems coaching does. It provides an opportunity for us to see in all the different roles, who are we, and how do we bring all the parts of us, the ones that we don't like so much, the ones that we love a lot, the ones that we kind of like, back to alignment, so that we show up and sparkle. So when I received your poetry, I was stumped, because deep democracy, which is the first one that comes up, we introduce as a meta skill. So not even a concept yet. We introduce deep democracy in the introductory course in 2 forms. And deep democracy comes from the work of Ani Mindell. And this concept of the meta skill of deep democracy, which is I am creating the space in myself, so that as a coach, in creating that space, I'm inviting all the voices to be heard. Again, not good, not bad, just voices. And obviously, one of the principles of ORSC is for us to keep an eye on whether all the voices in the system are being heard. So that's the deep democracy. And then you wrote this beautiful poem, which which touched me, and maybe we can read that if you'd like to do that.
That interesting enough, just to give some context to that piece, that piece actually came from a story in the Bible where it talks about the shepherd leaving the 99 sheep and going to look for the one that's lost. And why it stuck out to me was that in our lateral simplistic thinking, we can look at organizational systems like a numbers game. As long as I get most people, that's fine. But actually, you miss out someone whose voice is vital, even if it seems slightly contrary. It might actually be a voice that could bring balance to the system. And it's required there to keep the system honest. I'll read that. It's called Divine Maths. Doesn't add up. Who leaves the 99 looking for the one? Risk that makes no sense. Why not just chalk it up to human collateral loss? Here is the thing. What if the 99 and the one are nothing but one and the same? One lost is 99 missing. Then to leave the one is to leave the 99. To save the one is to save the 99. Without the one, the 99 are incomplete. They are all connected. They need each other to make the picture complete. So we celebrate the one as we do the 99. For in the world of divine maths, 99 and 1 make 1. No one left behind.
Wow. Powerful. I love the invitation. The invitation that all the voices, we need to listen to all the voices. And as you said, if we think we have the loud voices or the voices of the majority, then we're missing out on the wisdom that exists outside of those. And did this idea of this poem come about because of the introductory module, because you were introducing to this concept of deep democracy?
It didn't come about as a result of it, but it resonated when I started, because the way I operate in the space of poetry is to give some introduction to my, so I see myself, I go back to the word that the person you spoke to was talking about, this divinity, this idea of divinity. I go back to my process of creativity is based on the idea that I'm a conduit. So the idea is, if a concept or an idea comes to me, I make some notes, and then I expand that in a draft form. And then I'll go back over time and look at it, and it feels like this is about to give birth and be formulated and take on more form. Then I'll add more to it till there's a sense that, oh, you know what, this is ready to serve. And then I put it into finished form. But I have no idea at what point or where that will come about. It may never get shed. It may get shed very often. But it's in those moments of being completely connected to my intuition that I sense that, oh, this might be a good one to send to this person. This might be a good one that relates or connects with this idea or this concept. And so pieces are actually created waiting for somewhere to go.
Wow. There's so many, even in the way you're just describing, there's so many things we talk about in coaching around trusting your intuition and working with your intuition and allowing your intuition space and time to formulate and guide. You just invited us to do that in this context as well. Just invited us to think about it. Yeah. And everything, and I love what you're saying. There's another thing, is that sometimes in the work that we do as coaches, we're not even in a state of linear consciousness. We are just allowing for the questions to come out through us and to see how it lands. And then again, repeat something, or through our intuition, ask another question, so that the person sitting in front of us or the team sitting in front of us start thinking, what else? What may be possible?
Yeah. As a coach, sitting with the not knowing and trusting the unfolding of the process, I think is actually something that's very useful. And one of these pieces, I think, really talks about that, where it talks about the edge dance. So that discomfort of not knowing what actually And I wrote this from a personal point of view because I recognize that when something new is about to come out, that I'm not sure what it is or what nature or form it's going to take, there can be that sense of discomfort. But that sense of discomfort is not saying don't go there. It just says be aware, be conscious. Something is here. Make room for it to evolve, and don't prejudge it. If I'd like to read that, if that's okay.
Yeah, be wonderful. It's funny that I also went to that one.
There you go. We're demonstrating it already. Hey, if you're connected in intuition, if we're both connected in intuition, we're both connected to the same frequency. I love that. Edge dance. The edge, it's growth's dance floor, where safety and fear do the tango to the undulating tunes of my discomfort. To me, to you, can I or can't I? It's where the infinite me hides, awaiting the joy of discovery. Would you come dance with me?
I can't. I mean, you haven't even done module 2, and this is all we do for 3 days. Is this dance that we do between fear and safety, excitement and hesitation. You know, what is it that we're saying goodbye to, and what is it that we're going to go towards? And you know what, being conscious and intentional to say, I might not go there yet, or I might never go there. It's just not right. It's something about the universe tingling us, but deciding that it's not right, or really jumping into it. And it is a discomfort. And we don't like being in discomfort. But I love the idea that it's a tango, you know? Sometimes on a tango, when you're doing it, someone steps on you. And when we watch a tango, actually, it's so graceful and beautiful, but it requires a lot of physical strength and precision. And it's a skill. It's a skill that's delivered in such an elegant way, but it's still a skill.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there actually, because that brings into context and normalization that is a process of time. It takes time, and it takes care and attention, and you don't expect it to happen automatically. And there is a lot of normalization in that. I think was one of the motivation for putting that down there. Say, look, I'm experiencing this, and I'm expecting other people are experiencing this, but it's not a reason not to. It's just a reason to be aware and to recognize the back and forth that exist in that process, and nobody's got it perfect, right? And that working togetherness involved in that. So that kind of is some of the what I'm pointing to there.
Yeah. Well, it's a great poem, and I think we should use it because even as we go through the curriculum, I know I keep referring you back to ORSC, but as we go through the curriculum, that's exactly what's happening to us. We are also dancing as a systems coach. Can I coach a relationship, not the individuals? Do I, shall I try this tool, which feels a little bit scary because I'm actually might be opening something up and don't know how to close. Can I trust this? Can I trust myself? It is the dance that we do right from the beginning.
Another, sorry to cut across you, one of the things that came to mind just as you were speaking there was this whole idea that I think when we look at our brains, our mind, whatever, it kind of its role is to keep us safe. And back in the day, safety was more existential. It's this idea of, you know, there's a lion, there's a bear, or there's something that could come and consume you. However, as we've evolved out of those kind of environments where we're facing those kind of existential dangers, it's now flagging up like uncomfortable, unknown events as those kind of dangers. And that can often activate the fight, freeze kind of response. And it's to become aware of what that feels like in our bodies and recognize it and embrace it to say, oh, okay, there's something unknown, there's an unknown here. And I think it often helps actually to think, when last did I have this feeling and how did I overcome it? How the thing that was flagged, how did I eventually experience it? And very often, if we're honest, when we give ourselves the grace to proceed with that knowledge, we often come out and recognize that, oh, what was being flagged as a danger, we did okay, and we're still here. So there's that sense that there is a good intention in flagging, oh, wait, this is unknown. But then that's not a reason for inaction. It's a reason for considered action.
Yeah, yeah, because we interpret signals that we feel or we see as danger, go or no go.
Yeah.
But signals are just signals, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Something is different or something I need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Do I pay attention? Am I interpreting? Is it the same context? Maybe I reacted that way when I was 10 or when I was in a different context at work. This is a different context. What is it teaching me now? Yeah, I love that. And maybe it's a good time for us to have a look at the relationship systems intelligence perspective.
Ah, this is the I can see.
Yeah.
So this piece is an interesting one because it recognizes how insight changes perspective. And so it's this ever evolving. I think that's something that really resonated with me in the course that we were doing, is the idea that there's something seeking to evolve and come out. There's something seeking to, and once you consider that, understand that when that is let in, it changes the system. So the system itself is ever evolving. And that kind of is what reminded me of this list. This one is called I See. From where I stand, I see what I see, what is open to me. I move, I grow, I see what I see. As I stand anew to see other things, to see the same things, but not like I have seen, seeing them anew. What is seen from where I stand with eyes that have seen what can no longer be unseen, changing the context of the scene. I see what I see, just as you do too.
Yeah, that's the introduction of the, being able to see and feel and hear and experience the voice of the relationship. So something beyond the people involved in it. It's such a profound, it's something that we always knew about it, but didn't really allow ourselves to see it, to feel it, to sense it, to trust it. And as you said, the minute you get to experience this, you can never unsee it because it is always there. And it's always giving you an opportunity to have a different perspective come into. And it does open up so many things. I mean, I think on the course, I always give this example that it doesn't matter in a relationship who takes out the rubbish. The point of the matter is for the relationship to function well, for the house to be clean, for the rubbish to be taken, somebody has to do it. It doesn't matter who does it. And the minute it's not about me, I've done 5 things, you've done 6 things, I've done 1 thing. It's the minute it's not a numbers game, that someone's got to do it, you feel liberated to just do it. Gives you responsibility.
Yeah. And it really points out one of the main things with coaching. One of the most powerful effects in coaching is this idea of a reframe. The idea that, because our mind often wants to create a relationship, that something out there means one thing and it can only ever mean one thing, therefore only has one response. But ultimately, if you reframe something, all of a sudden you feel differently about it, and the way you respond about it is different because you're now seeing something else from a different perspective than you'd seen it before. And that can alter your mood, it can alter your motivation, it can alter all sorts of things. And to me, that just shows that we see as we are, not what is. So often when we say that because what's happened out there determines that this must be the response, if we can change the perspective of how that thing that has happened is seen, actually that changes the response and how you feel about it. So it's that openness to always working in here and not giving all the power to something that's happened out there.
I love that. You know what, Frank, like a lot of organizations are always saying, teams don't take initiatives, people don't do these, and people don't do that. And I do think this kind of a reframe, even the capacity to be able to see that it's not that person not doing something, or I'm not contributing because of something else. If I'm connected to a different perspective, whether it's the mission of the organization or the goal of the team, it changes the way I show up at work. It changes the way I show up in relationship with other people. It doesn't mean that I'm going to do everything. It doesn't mean I'm going to always be aligning around everyone. But what it does give is the opportunity to bring in a new perspective about how I might react, what I might say, so that I can shift the way things are. Well, the things that I'm not happy with, I can either shift myself and say, I'm not happy with this, so I'm going to leave, or I can shift myself to share that, to see whether we can solve that together. Yeah, it is such a powerful reframe. It's a powerful reframe.
Yeah. And I love that, the idea that, yeah, do I just share this and shift where I'm coming from? Yeah, it's a powerful. I think one of the things with coaching as a whole, and obviously when you then layer it with the system orientated one, because I think what I've come to appreciate from doing the course, at least the bits of the course I've done, is that nothing exists in isolation. And so it's this idea that you can have a more sustainable and holistic outcome if you hold them in this context. And I think I told this story in the course, and it's worth repeating, where I was working with a client who was feeling like they were underachieving because they've been given two different roles that in theory was supposed to be possible, based on the premise that one of those roles would be diminishing and the other role would then be static, and then therefore they'll have the capacity to deal with it. So the idea was there's transition period. However, when I then kind of went through an exercise with the client, I put in, we used a bin that was in the room. You have to be creative as a coach and say, okay, imagine this bin is your workload. And so, yeah, so let's talk about the first role, and we put that in there. And then, okay, so tell me what's happening with that role. And then we discovered that role wasn't decreasing at all, because certain things that were meant to pass out of the process were still left in there for review and things like that. And then this other role went on top of it. So it's kind of like, okay. So in the end, what she got from that exercise was to recognize that she had been beating herself up for not achieving this thing. But actually, within the context of the system they had, that the work was too much for her to do, because the fundamental assumption behind it was not true. And so that caused her to change her perspective and reframe and recognize her attitude has always been to beat herself up rather than look at what's there out there and change the system, or look at what's not working in the system, and resulted in her going back and doing a review of all of that. So it is interesting to see that dynamic at play.
And well, wow. Yeah, I do remember you sharing that. And it is such a powerful story. And just imagine how many of us beat ourselves up because we're not doing enough, we're not good enough, or I can't believe that I can't get it done. As you said, just that time in a coaching environment to just be able to put it outside of you and examine it away from you, and then stepping into that thing and saying, yeah, it's just too much. One person just can't do it. It is a powerful reframe. So what do you think? Should we read the final one that I've got here, which is being open to what is emerging in the system? And you called it, I can adapt.
Yes, indeed, that would be a good one. And this one, again, was a personal reflection on recognizing when I had a situation when I looked at it and it felt like it only was one way. And then when I looked at it again, I thought, no, actually, I'm open to that, because that is effectively how we position as coaches. Is you never know what's going to happen in a coaching session. Your coaching session is not one of those things where you go in and say this, that. You have no idea what's going to come out. Like you said earlier on, is that listening to your intuition and being connected. And I just felt that if you're going to work within the system effectively, you need to have some level, you hold on to your values, but you have some level of adaptability to how you achieve that.
Yeah, and just before you start, it is one of the principles for all practitioners or systems workers that everything is in a state of emergence. And it's a really liberating state, I think, because you don't have to hold to, as you said, a structure or something. Yes, we have an overarching arc. The coaching always starts with the agenda of the client, and then it needs to end with some action so that it's moving forward. But what happens during that process how the client emerges, the direction they want to go, we have no idea. We just have to ask the questions and allow them to follow their own flow, however that comes.
Yeah, that's a beautiful framing of the coaching process. You've got those, where are we going? Have we got there, or have we done in getting there? But the bit in the middle, yes, this is the adaptability piece. I can adapt. I can adapt to changing situations because I've not made up my mind what they should be. I am free to see what comes to me, hear what wisdom it has to give. I sit and listen while it teaches me what the universe seeks to unfold. Then I wonder what next to do. That I get from the universe too. So at no point do I tell it how it should be. I let it speak and take the lead. In that moment, I am wide open, not presumptuous about what I am to be doing. Once that is clear, I take the next step, all in wonder and amazement at what comes next, trusting with every turn of events what the universe will serve up must be that I have learnt to trust.
Yes, I love it. All in wonder and amazement at what comes next. It's just that just covered, like, I mean, that is the essence of that principle. All in wonder and amazement at what comes next.
Yeah, many a coaching sessions I've been surprised by the wisdom that comes out of.
Yeah.
And that's one of the disciplines of coaching really is not to harden your expectation or think and trying to predict, because the whole essence of coaching is to unlock the wisdom of the person or unlock the wisdom of the system. And if we are already predetermining what that is, then we can become leading in that context. So it's kind of being open, and that's another element of that adaptability, is to say, yeah, I may think I have an inkling, but I'm open to see what is actually coming in. And very often you'll be surprised at some of the things people come with. Up, nah, didn't see that coming. Did not see that coming, but it's all welcome.
And it is, isn't it? That's we speak a lot about innovation and creativity. And yes, there is a process. And of course, there's lots of different ways of thinking and creating that the situations for us to be creative and innovative. But I do think this idea of being always in wonder and amazement at what comes next, it is what liberates us as coaches, obviously, when we're in that role. When we are in front of 10 people, 5 people, 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, it's if you're holding that I wonder and amazement at what comes next, then it gives you that freedom. And that is when I go back to the first poem around the deep democracy, which you call the divine mats. That's when you're allowing all the voices to come, because it's taking you somewhere that you have no idea where it's going to take you. It's so liberating as a coach to know that the universe is guiding, and your job is really to be present and create the space and allow that amazement. Because when you're amazed by what's in front of you, and when you are in wonder, that is what you infect the system with, because then they become amazed and in wonder with each other.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, actually, one of the main overarching things that I detected when I'd gone through what we have of the ORSC course, and what motivated me to send those pieces, is that there is an acknowledgement that there is some sort of overarching intelligence or power or essence that exists, that wants the best, and that you can trust that it can produce the best if we surrender the illusion of control. I think that is one thing I find very interesting, that idea that we as human beings tend to operate under the concept of control, that the only way to achieve an outcome is to control all the elements of it, because somehow we have that intelligence. But when you now spring it into a system context and you're dealing with multiple individuals trying to achieve an objective, there almost needs to be a surrender of that idea of control, and more be open to the idea of working together harnessing the gifts of everyone, which it talks about the different roles, but then believing that because of the intention that has been set, that overarching energy and wisdom would operate to bring about the best good if we allow it.
Wow. You know what? We have to have another conversation around this, because this whole conversation we've been having as a society around artificial intelligence and how we are going to be working, or how we've been working, and how now we are even going to be working more with artificial intelligent tools. How is that going to liberate us as a human, as a species, to work more collaboratively together to solve some of the most, well, threatening issues that we're faced with? And I love that the concept is not just contained within human to human relationships. We are talking about all relationships. If we trust it, if we have faith, and we're conscious and intentional about it, not unconsciously just either making statements or blindly following it, but we allow it and we experience it and we welcome it and evolve ourselves, what might be possible?
Indeed.
Well, that is definitely the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about. But for now, thank you so much. I've loved hearing your voice, you know, your voice to the words. It's been amazing. So thanks a lot, Frank.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share poetry and to also relate it to something that's actually out there and making a difference in the world. Because that's always been my dream, is that poetricity is about using poetry to power up transformation from the within. And when we begin to change our paradigms, it begins to create opportunities for being in the world in a way that's supportive. And I'm a very big advocate of oneness, of identifying our oneness, which is something it talks about. A system is about identifying the oneness of intention, the oneness of togetherness, and the value of each individual to make that possible.
Thank you so much.